Hello everyone and welcome to another video here in the channel. My name is Leal, as you guys know, and today we're going to be going over how to create this spheres right here for your renders. This is a very nice little addition that you can include in especially the clean presentation renders that you have for your characters, so that people can see how you approach the light and how everything is like properly set up. So if you want to know how to do this, make sure to subscribe and let's go to the main video. So we have all seen this sort of like little elements that are in some renders, and of course if you're in a 3D production, you're going to be getting some of these references from the on-site recording stage. And I thought it might be a good idea to do a little bit of a modeling exercise, show you how to do some of these elements right here, and of course do them or use them ourselves in our renders. So I'm here inside of Maya. As you can see, I brought this image plane and just let's start modeling. I have the first sphere right here. It's very much like the size that we're expecting to have right there. So this one's going to be like right around there. I'm just going to do a mirror here, and it's going to be X negative world to have it on the other side. As you can see, it doesn't perfectly match. And the reason why this doesn't match is because a lot of the times when you're modeling something, the picture that you're modeling from will have a little bit of perspective. You can see it on this thing right here. And it's really not big of a deal. You just need to like make sure that you understand that and take that into account. So let's hide those spheres and let's do this little element right here. One of the secrets that I always tell people when modeling is you don't always need to model everything. So I know that there's a little screw that goes into a little chrome ball right there. We really don't need it. Now for those little indentations, here's a little trick. We're going to do 48 divisions, so we have a lot. I like using even numbers or numbers that we can easily divide or multiply. And we're going to create this little guy right here. If we bring this in, we can make sure that it's perfectly like aligned to the center of the sphere with a snapping tool right there. And now I'm going to grab all of the upper faces, Control E, and we're going to push this up. And then we grab all of these faces right here, Control E again, and we push them out. Now to generate that sort of like a screwdriver effect, I'm going to grab all of these guys right here. I'm going to Control E, and actually first, before doing that, I'm going to go with my cut tool. I'm going to add one cut line right there and another cut line right here, so that we have a little bit of a support edge. I'm going to grab all of this, Control E. I'm going to keep faces together off, and we're going to do a little bit of an offset with Control. You can press Control to make sure that this offset is a little bit cleaner, something like that. And now when we do this, we can do a second extrusion with Control E again and just push these guys out. And that's it. That way we create this sort of like a very like nice sort of like, I don't know, screw effect. And we get this little piece. Of course, if we press number 3, this is going to look really, really weird. This is where, again, support edges are really important. You guys know I'm a huge fan of bevel. I mention this all the time in my Maya course and in my Blender course. So I'm just going to do this right here, do a little bevel with 2 segments. And that's going to help with the like sharpness of the effects. To make these things a little bit sharper, again, with my cut tool, I can add just one line right there and one more line right there. And look at that. We get the very, very nice effect right there. We're going to face transformation and clean the whole object. And very importantly, this is something that a lot of people forget to do. Rename your stuff. So I'm just going to call this sphere knob. And normally I like to use the underscore geo to know that this is a geometry. And that's it. We grab this guy, shift right click, and we mirror to the other side. So now we have the spheres and we got the little like knobs right there. Let's go back to the front view. Actually, let me grab the image and I'm just going to push it back. There we go. And the next thing we need is, of course, the main like support, this sort of like a big element right there, the tube. So I'm going to grab a cylinder. I'm going to scale it so that it matches roughly the size. Probably a little bit more, so right around there. And we're going to extrude this out, or just scale it out. There we go. Now on one side, as you can see, we have this sort of like a screw on this area, but we don't really have it on this side. So that tells me that this like black stuff, this is just like a cap or something. Again, not really like complicated. I'm just gonna grab all of this vertex right here, push them back a little bit. I would say right around there, probably a little bit more, right around there. I'm gonna grab all of the faces, and we're gonna say Control E, offset quite a bit, and then Control E again, and just extrude this out. And that should give us like the right sort of like effect right there. Now, we don't have to be super, super precise. There is a way in which we can model the like screw of this element right here in such a way that it looks like it's actually creating a spiral. But since this is just going to be an element that's going to be in some of our renders, and we don't really care about like let's call it the super precision of it, we can just like imply the little like corkscrew thing, and that should be more than enough. Now, one thing that I am noticing is that it changes diameter right around there. So I'm going to grab all of my faces here. With R, I'm going to press Control and the green square right there so that we scale everywhere. There we go. Grab all of this vertex, push them in a little bit more. As you can see, these guys are a little bit after they finish this like spot right there. So right around there. Remember that the image is in a little bit of perspective. So we should take that into account. We're going to offset this, Control E, and push this out. So that gives me enough room to have that sort of like a black piece that we're going to add in just a second. And still have like the rest of the elements. So once we have this, what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to add one division right around there. And then with my multiple cut edge tool, right over here, the insert edge loop tool, if you double click, remember every single tool inside of Maya has multiple options. I count 1, 2, 3, 4 divisions. So I'm going to grab 4. There we go. I'm going to grab all of these 4 edges that I just added, bevel them with just one segment. And then I'm going to grab all of these rings, Control E, and we're just going to extrude them out. And then we can even like offset a little bit to create like this sort of like sharp effect right there. That's it. Now the only thing we need to do is we need to add some support edges. So I'm going to grab all of the borders right there. And once we got all of the borders connected or selected, we can do a bevel, and it's going to make sure that when we subdivide this object, we get a clean, smooth effect. So all of these borders right here, including, don't forget, this one all the way to the other side. 2 segments is usually a good number, and there you go. So now we can press number 3, and as you can see, we're going to get this very, very nice effect. And it's such a small detail, right? But if you do this detail, just your stuff is going to look very, very nice. By the way, guys, if you have not subscribed to the channel, I would really appreciate it if you did it right now. We're going to continue with the tutorial. Don't worry. There's not going to be any ad or anything, I hope. But just like if you can subscribe, that would be great. We have like over 60% of people are not subscribed, and one of the best ways in which you can support this project and keep learning about the 3D world is, of course, by subscribing right here. So now let's do this block. And this is a question that I get asked often about overlapping objects. Like, do we need to cut the boolean out of this like square so that it really looks like this thing is on the outside of the element? And the answer is no. If the object's not going to deform and you're not going to like really see it or anything, you don't need to worry too much about like the effects. As you can see, this is just a very basic block. It's kind of like a clamp. We don't even need to do the full clamp for this particular one. If you want to be super precise and the main focus of the project is to do a render of this like device, then yeah, you need to be super precise. But since we're only going to be using this to build a tool that we can reutilize in a lot of our renders, then it's better to just try to be a little bit more mindful. So I'm just going to grab this guys, push them in a little bit. Again, you can see that this is very, very close to the sort of like square right there. So that to me looks good. I'm going to go to the lower section. I'm going to grab this face, or actually I'm going to assign one line at the very center, because you can see that there's like a little bit of a cut like right around there. So I'm going to grab this too, Control E, and push them down. It's going to give me this sort of like a block effect. Then I can kind of see a little bit of an angle of this thing kind of like pushing back. Now I do like this section that we see there on the line, and yeah, I mean let me show you how I would do a square right there. So if I wanted to do a circle, what I would do is I would divide this by half, like what I'm doing right there, and then we need to create a sort of like circular shape right there. The best way is to have 8 faces. So I'm gonna add a couple more divisions like this. And as you can see, we now have this 8 faces that we can delete on both sides, okay? And we can select all of this edge and go to the Edit Mesh and Circularize option. Same thing over here, we circularize, and that's it. Now, the only thing we need to do if we really want to make this as clean as possible is try to like match the thickness. And actually, like I was not intending it to be like that precise, but as you can see, this is like very, very precise. When we smooth, that looks very close. I'm probably just gonna like make it a little bit smaller. I'm gonna press Control and only in the red circle. And then what we can do is we can just push this tube a little bit lower so that it's right in the center of the whole thing. So now we can select both elements and bridge them together, and that's going to give us the sort of clamp. But as we know, there's a split, right? Like there's a sort of like slit at the center that gets like pressed together, and that's how you get the sort of like effect. So very easy to do as well. We just grab this whole line right here. I'm going to bevel. I'm going to make the fraction smaller and the segment just one segment, like right around there, I would say. grab this new loop and just delete. And the only thing we need to do is we need to bridge these elements together. And since we're working, this is one of the secrets about like modeling. Whenever you're modeling something, you really want to make sure that you're modeling it in a low poly version first. And then if it looks good on the poly version, it's very easy to subdivide, add more details, and add more elements to make this look a lot better. So now it's time to start adding some of the details. I'm going to start with this internal details. So I'm going to select the whole loop. Whenever you're doing a bevel, another very important thing is to always sort of like finish the loop. You don't want to like keep or have an empty sort of like edge, because if you have an empty edge, what can happen is that you are going to get a, what's the word, an angle at some point. So this should be good. Let's do a bevel, 2 segments and a small fraction. And as you can see, that's going to give me a very nice sort of like a holding effect on the whole element. We can check or change the circumference in just a second. Don't worry about that. And now that we have that, actually, I'm going to go back here. And before I do the bevel, I'm just going to grab all of the edges. I'm just going to do the bevel at this point, because it's a very, very like square shape, very simple shape. Some of you might be wondering, why are we not adding support edges instead of doing bevels? And remember that support edges will give you a very, very hard, almost like knife sharpness on the element, and a bevel will give you a softened edge. And this looks like a little bit of a softened cube. So now we bevel. And very important, especially on this corners right here, we gotta make sure that we don't get as an ugly pinch as what we have right there. I mean, that's not that big of a deal. It's a flat area, no need to worry. But if you want to be like super like like precise about it, you can change the filtering. Instead of auto, you can do uniform, and that's gonna give you like no weird elements. It might get you a little bit of a weird pinch. That's why I don't use this always. So in this case, auto is more than fine. Yes, we are getting some angles, but those like angle apologists, angles are not always bad. Like, we can just triangulate this, or even like do a dirty trick, which is just mesh and smooth this. And again, since this is a flat area, like even though that topology looks a little bit weird, once you smooth it out, like no one is gonna notice anything on that sort of like pinch right there. So yeah, that's it. I'm not gonna smooth that though. Let's go back. Now, one thing I do want to have is I want to have this very clean circle. So here is where we can actually add a support edge right there and right here. Now we're going to have a little bit of an issue, because as you can see, this is not flowing properly. Can we solve this? Yes. If we just like complete a full loop around the whole thing, this is going to now be a square. That's one option to solve like this topology issue. So we can just go around the whole thing. And again, since it's a flat area, it doesn't even need to be like super precise. And if we go right there, now this is a square and this is a square. So if we insert an edge loop right here, as you can see, it's going to go nicely around the whole thing. And we're going to have that very nice hold effect right there. Now, I did mention that I was going to show you how to like make this hole a little bit smaller. And to be honest, in this case, the best idea is just scale the whole object down until it kind of like fits very nicely right there. There we go. And now just go to the front view and grab all of this vertex right here. Push them up, and then grab all of these vertices right here, push them in. I'm gonna leave a little bit of a space right there. Grab all of these guys. Same here. I'm gonna leave a little bit of space so that it looks like it's holding, and that's it. We got that little like nice cube right there. So we grab this guy right here, and ideally we should only need to do a mirror. In this case, it's gonna be a world positive X. Hit apply so that we have it right over here. I know. The question is going to be, but what about this one? This one doesn't have the hole exactly how it needs to be. And you're totally right. In this case, this is what I would do. I would just like probably push this guy, get all of this sort of like vertices in. Keep it right around there, similar to the other one. Grab that vertex right there. Control F11 to select all of the vertices. Control E, R, we scale down until we get the size of the hole right there. Control E, and we push out. I mean, we can even like change the silhouette a little bit. We don't see really what's going on here, but I can imagine that it's a very sort of like similar process. So we just select these two guys right there, and very importantly, we bevel to make sure that when we smooth, everything is like held very, very nicely. Now, you can see that this middle square right there is very similar. It's a very similar square to what we have right here. And this is where there's a very famous quote that says, work smart, not hard, right? So, again, since we're not doing a manufacturing project, or this is not meant to be a project that's going to be used for like a product advertisement. It's just an extra thing that we want to add. We can very easily just grab this thing. Let me delete. We duplicated that, of course. I'm going to delete one of them, and then I'm going to select this one, center the pivot point. However, this one will be bigger, right? Because the hole of this one needs to match the hole of the big tube right here. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. That seems about right. Let's position it so that it like matches perfectly. The problem here is that the pivot point is not set exactly the same. Let me show you how we can do that. If you want to make sure that this pivot point is exactly on the center here, we can go to the right view. I can press the D and V to snap it to that point right there. And yeah, that pretty much gives me the exact like center of the object. So now if I want to snap it to the center of this object right here, again, the easiest way to do it is just grab this big one right here, and with V, just snap it right there. So now I know that if I slide this thing, it's always going to be sliding on the center of the object. That's why like knowing about mirror, well, the snapping and pivot points is very, very important for this sort of things. Now you can see that the line is actually on the other side. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to rotate this around. Actually, no, it's fine like this. Let's, of course, get this to the center. It's a little bit smaller on the side. And you can see this point is a little bit higher right there. Perfect. Now, this one has a little bit of a different thing. And I do want to add that sort of like red thing. I think there's a very famous quote, right? Like the devil's on the details. So if we add those little things to our element, we're going to be able to just make it pop way, way more. So I'm going to start first with the cylinder, or with the little like lever thing. So this is just a very simple cylinder right here. Make it smaller, rotate it 90 degrees, have it. It's supposed to be center, right? Like it makes sense to have it center, even though the image is not center. I would imagine that this thing should be center. So right around there, I'm going to grab the 4 faces here on the top. I'm going to hit Control E, and we're going to push them up to right around there. And then again, with my mesh tools and my insert edge loop, we're going to insert multiple edge loops right there. And we can start going to vertex mode. Here's where soft selection could work, but in this case, I'm just going to do it manually. And I'm just going to capture the curvature of that object right there, as close as possible. That's why working again in low poly version is way easier, because you don't have to deal with a lot of geometry. There we go. Let's freeze the transformation. The movement tool seems to be on a weird like option, so I'm just going to move it there. Of course, this is not as thick, so again, I'm just guesstimating that's probably around there. See, this is one of those like happy little accidents. Look at this. Instead of having this completely straight, there's a little bit of a curvature to it. I like it. I'm just going to keep it like that. Like there's no need to modify it, because we can like take that little artistic like decision and just get something that looks a little bit nicer. We're going to offset this and delete. And once we got that, we're just going to, of course, mirror from one side to the other. So that's it. That's our object. If I press number 3, we get a nice result. I still want to do a bevel. So I'm going to bevel all of the borders, including this little corner. So we get a like nice little sharp edge there at the end. So yeah, that's about it. So we bevel. And that's it. It's going to be our little red piece. And then we got a hexagonal sort of bolt, right? So I'm going to grab another cylinder. Let's isolate both of these guys. Actually, now let me show you another trick here. So I'm going to go to this guy right here. And since we already have the faces, right? I can just grab this faces right here and do an edit mesh and a duplicate. And we just duplicate the faces from within this object. So I know that this is exactly where it needs to be, and it's going to be like the proper size and everything. Now this one right here, let's isolate. We need to Control E and create like the little cap. You can see that the normals are inverted. The faces are black. To fix that, we do a mesh display and we reverse. There we go. And then the problem here is that we want a hexagonal sort of shape. And right now we have 20 sides here. So, hey, how can we solve that, right? Ideally, we would start with a 6-sided cylinder and then go all the way to a, in this case, 20-sided element. And that's actually the best way to do it. So I'm just going to create a new cylinder right here. I'm going to get it there into the center. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And on the sides of the cylinder, I'm going to change the sides to 6. There we go. Now, of course, we're going to make this a lot smaller. Should be, let's say, right around there. We can snap it as well. This is a very nice sort of like topology lesson, because we are going to start with this face right here. And we want to combine it so that we go all the way to 20. Why do we want to do this, right? Like, well, what's the purpose of this? The main purpose is that we want to have a very smooth sort of like round border, but we want to keep this very like nice tight effect right here. So I know that for this one right here, I'm going to create a little bit of a loop. So I'm going to offset this just a little bit, just around there, because eventually all of these faces are going to be extruded in, right? To create a little like hold for the bolt. Now, these two guys, of course, we're going to combine into a single object. We combine it so that we can work together with the topology side of things. And the interesting thing about this is that we need to do a very like common topology trick that's called simplification, but in this case is reverse. Usually, when we have 3 edge loops like this, what we do is we create a little sort of like trapezius shape. We push this like this, and we minimize from 3 elements to 1. Which allows us to create this sort of like a subdivision. In this particular case, we're actually going to do the opposite. We're going to start with 1, and we're going to go into 3, so that we get a little bit closer to the final result. So I'm going to grab this guy right here, Control E, and we're going to do this. Okay, now we can do that on all of the edges at the same time. Let me go back a little bit. So if we grab all of these edges, Control E, we can push them up, keep faces together off, and as you can see, and then scale them in a little bit. And as you can see, that gives me more faces. So instead of having 6 faces, we now have double the amount of faces, right? Or actually triple. I think it's triple, because we get 2 more faces per face that we are doing like this little trick with. Now, this is something that I teach. I mean, it's not going to give you the cleanest sort of look. Actually, let me show you something here. Now that I think of this is going to work even better. So now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab all of this edge right here, Control E again. Let's push it out. And now with this pushed out edge, we can do a mesh and circularize. That's going to give me an even better result now that I think of it. There we go. It's going to look very weird, right? Like, it looks very, very weird on this sort of like 2D view. But look at that. When we press number 3, we got 72 edges. In this case, we got 18 edges. So it's really close to the 20 original edges that we have. Now we can do another little like extrusion out, which is going to give us a very clean sort of like look. Yep. And this one's the one that's going to go to the border pretty much. So this is why, again, topology is not like a... I mean, I always consider topology to be like a puzzle, but there's no like right answer to topology. If you can get it to work, that's it. Let's bevel that border right there. And of course, we're going to grab, this is another little trick right here. We're going to grab the center lines, and I'm going to grab all of this. Not those ones. That one, and this borders right here. Only this borders. And all of those borders we're also going to bevel. Of course, the fraction is going to be a little bit smaller. And in here, I do want to change the miltering to uniform. Or to patch. Patch might work a little better. Can we try radial? I don't love it because as you can see, we're getting a little bit of an issue right there. I'm going to try to collapse those edges. I don't love that. Okay, let me try. Let's not do the internal lines just yet. Let's just do the first ones here. Because right now, as you can see, we definitely need to add like the divisions on these lines so that we can properly create the bevel. There we go. That's a little bit better. As you can see, the bevel is going to go a little bit farther out, but it should behave a little bit better. There we go. Perfect. So that's it. So yeah, the topology is a mess, and I'm sure there's other ways to do it. Like I know that if I spend enough time, I can definitely find a way to do it a little bit differently. However, this is perfectly fine for a detail like this. Like there's no topology police that's gonna come to your house and be like, oh, that topology sucks, and I'm gonna revoke your permission to be a 3D artist. Like it's an object, it's not gonna deform. It's a small little detail here on the little element right there. So having like weird topology there, it's perfectly fine. Even a Boolean would have worked right there. So yeah, that's it right there. Now what we need to do is, I would imagine this thing, like we don't see it, right? But there's another sort of like support on the back. So I'm gonna just do a cylinder as well. I think cylinders look good right here. There we go. And if we don't, there's a very like famous rule that I use, which is if you don't see it or if you're not gonna see it, you don't need to model it. So we're not gonna see the connection to this thing because there's gonna be this little board on the front. So as long as this like object here, the cylinder here, looks good, that's more than enough. There we go. Now I do need to model the bottom part of the tripod. I'm not gonna bore you with all of the details. It's a very similar process to what we've been doing so far on this thing. I want to spend a little bit more time on the texturing instead. I'm gonna show you how to properly texture this thing so that we can very easily save the scene and use it as many times as we want. Now the final thing that we need is that little board right there, and I actually already have the image. Give me 1 second. So I'm gonna go to the front view and I'm gonna do another import. So actually, I'm gonna do a plane. Let's rotate the plane so that it's looking at us, 90 degrees. And if I assign, I'm gonna assign a new material. It's gonna be an Arnold AI standard surface material. And on the textures, on the color texture, I'm gonna plug in this texture right here, the color checker. And as you can see, if I press number 6, we're gonna have this. What's happening here, of course, is that the plane is not like a uniform, like these are not squares. There's a couple of ways to do it, but in this case, I'm just gonna like scale this plane down until we get a very sort of like a nice effect right there. Cool. So we just scale this down. So this is the little square that we want to have right here on the front of our little element. As you can see, it's a little big, so let's make it a little bit smaller. Right around there sounds about good, or seems about right. So this thing is going to be here, but I want to create a little bit of a border for this thing because otherwise it just looks like weird. You can see that this one has like each color frame pretty much, and we can actually do like exactly that. So I'm gonna duplicate this. Let me isolate it, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna recycle this edges right here. There's an option that we can use on the move tool. If you go to, where is it? Preserve UVs, there we go. So we can move this, preserve UVs, and that allows me to move the edges without modifying the UVs. So what I'm gonna do, as you can see right here, is I'm just gonna start pretty much building my grid so that it matches perfectly with the underlying element that we have. So I'm recycling all of these edges. There we go. And if we don't need one edge, we just control and delete to, well, delete it. Over here, same stuff. Oh, that's weird. Okay, let's do a phrase history. Okay, we're gonna have to sort of like eyeball it. There was a little bit of a weird sort of effect there. And here, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna start adding some lines, right? That's another option that you can do if you feel like you can work a little bit faster this way. You can also just move some of these lines around. I'm just trying to be as efficient as possible. And I know that not all of them are going to have the same like measurement. I actually, and I've mentioned this before, I actually like when things are not perfect because in the 3D world it's very common for things to be always like very, very perfect. So imagine someone manufactured this little thing, like, I don't know, somewhere. And there were some issues with the mold. So you're going to get those like little problems every now and then, which again, I think worked very nicely. There we go. So now we just select all of these guys right here. All of the internal shapes, we delete that, and we got our grid. Now to get a nice like round element, I need to grab the whole border. I'm gonna do a Control E, and I'm gonna do a little bit of an offset right there. That's gonna give me a round effect. Of course, I need to, I'm just gonna assign the basic material again, the Lambert, because this one's not supposed to be anything. This is just gonna be sort of like covering this other elements right there, right? We're gonna Control E, and this is a little trick that I do. I'm gonna Control E just a little bit, and then Control E again, a little bit more, and then Control E again. So we're adding the support edges inside of the squares from the get-go. Oh, seems like the first one didn't work. There we go. Oh, okay, that was the first one. Sorry. So Control E, just a little bit, and then Control E again. That's your actual thickness. and then Control E again, and there we go. That's gonna give me again the internal like sort of like edges, holding edges that we need for the effects. Now, if you want this to be like hyper like a smooth, of course, we need to add more cut edges. And again, you don't need to be in this case super precise. We're just gonna like add some cuts like this, close to the border, with my cut tool. There we go. And by doing this, we're generating all the necessary supports so that when we press number 3, those squares that we have there with the pictures, with the colors, they don't go into circles and they are kept as squares. As close as possible as you can to the border. There you go. Look at that. Not bad, right? So I do recommend having a backplate, to be honest. So to do that and not die in the, like to save myself a little bit of time, I'm just gonna duplicate this again. So mesh display, where is it? Sorry, edit mesh and then duplicate. Push this out or back. There we go. And again, no need to worry about topology too much. This is just a flat area, so we should just grab all of this thing, Control E, offset it a little bit to create another edge loop, and then mesh, fill hole. Grab this one, edit mesh, and if you want, you can poke it. That's fine. When you smooth it, like no one's gonna know that that's just like triangles. We Control E again, give it a little bit of a thickness for the back part of the plate. You do want to probably like bevel this edges right here, so that it smooths a little bit nicer. And that's gonna sort of like sandwich in the other one right here. So let's enter the put there. This is gonna sandwich that in. And if we press number 6, we should see the plane. We're gonna push it in C a little bit. There we go. So we see the little squares right there. Cool. So yeah, as I mentioned, I'm going to be finishing some of the other stuff, and you can even leave it like this. If this thing's going to kind of like be poking out from the bottom of your image, this is perfectly fine. But we do need to do a little bit of cleanup over here. So for the spheres, I'm actually going to separate them. And the first thing that I recommend doing is merging or grouping things up where you need them. So for instance, all of these 3 things right here, I'm going to Control G. I'm going to call this color checker group. And we just, for instance, this thing right here, we can definitely combine it into a single object. Get it back into there and just call this color checker frame underscore geo. And then this one is the color checker plane underscore geo. So let me do the renaming for all this stuff and the hierarchy so that you can see the final element. And then we're going to talk about materials and we're just going to do a very quick render. Very well. So as you can see right here, guys, I have 3 main groups. I got the sphere groups, I got the color checker group, and I got the main structure. Why is this? Why am I separating them like this? And the reason is, if I ever need to just render either the spheres, the board, or the structure, I can like separate them. And all of these things right here can be, I don't know, let's call this a render support a guide group. So that way, if I need to not use any of this, I can just turn it off. Now, as you remember, on this color checker thing that I did, it was very important for me to give it an AI standard surface group. And the reason why we're going to be using this is because we're going to be using Arnold. So we want to make sure that whenever I reference in or import this scene, all of the materials that I'm importing are working like properly. One thing that I haven't done, and I should have done a long time ago, was save the scene. So I'm going to save this scene as the, let's call this render spheres. So anytime I need the render spheres, I'm just going to be either importing or referencing that one. Very important to change the names. Everything should have a name. Why? Because imagine that you have your main scene and you have an AI standard surface 1, and one of the materials in here is also AI standard surface 1. When you import the object, the names are going to have a conflict and you're going to have an issue. So this one's going to be color checker plane M color checker plane. That's it. Now, for all of the other ones, I'm going to be assigning materials that are going to look or we're not going to be using textures. We don't want to use textures. The only texture I'm using is this one right here, again, to make the file easy to transport and stuff. So this frame right here, for instance, the color frame, I'm also right click, assign new material, Arnold, and we're going to do an AI standard surface, and I'm going to call this I'm going to call this CC, color checker, so that I know that if I have another black plastic anywhere, it's going to be a different one, and this one's going to be black plastic. So it's of course going to be a dark plastic, and as you can see on the reference, it's very matte, so I'm going to bring the roughness quite high to like a 0.6. I'm probably going to go like a little bit of a dark gray, so something around there. There we go. I'm going to use the exact same material. This is one thing that you might want to do. Or actually, no, it's actually... let's just a different one. So I'm going to grab all of these elements right here, which are going to be another sort of like a little bit glossier material. Going to assign new material, Arnold, a standard surface, and all of those are going to be CC. This is going to be glossy black. There we go. We'll also go here, and not super glossy, but just a little bit glossier. There we go. This one, this one, this one, and this guys right here are going to share another material. Arnold AI standard surface. This one's going to be a, let's call this dark metal. And again, so I know that I have later on other dark metals. This is going to be CC, color checker, dark metal. So metalness goes all the way up, and we're going to bring this down. So it's going to be a relatively darkish, roughish metal, something like that. So we wanna see the metal, but not like super much. We're going to grab another one right here, Arnold AI standard surface. Again, M_CC. Let's call this lever. And if you like other color, like I'm going to be using red just because it makes a little bit more sense. But if you like any other color, that's fine. I do recommend never using pure red, so I'm going to go... I'm going to go a little bit darker here, a little bit less saturated, just so that it's not like overwhelming. Now, these ones are the very important ones, the chrome balls. So I'm going to assign a new material right here. Assign new material. Again, Arnold AI standard surface. It's also going to be a metal. It's going to be completely white, and the roughness is going to be like pretty much gone. So I'm going to say just like 0.02. So super low roughness. And this is going to be MCC chrome. There we go. This one, on the other hand, assign new material, Arnold AI standard surface. Very important. You're gonna go into the colors, and the problem here is you might think that this is 0.5 on the color right here, but if we go to the values, you're gonna see that we're still not exactly on the 50% gray. So we actually need to go to a either a, I think it's RGB 1:0, or the point is we need to go right here. So that's the middle gray, right? Because the rendering space is a little bit difficult, or the display space. So we want to go to rendering space, and we're gonna go down there to the middle of the bar. Right around there for now. And on the roughness, I'm going to give it a little bit more roughness. Not super rough, probably like a 0.5 on roughness. And that's it. So now every single element has what it needs. I'm going to delete this one right here. I'm going to save this scene. And my scene is perfectly ready to be used like somewhere else. So let me show you real quick. I'm going to open another scene that I have right here. Got this one. Let's save. And I got this like very cool swords that I've been working on for our upcoming course, which is going to be the Substance Painter course. So this is a little bit of a sneak peek of that. And I'm just going to save file. And normally I recommend referencing. Why referencing? Because if you reference things in, you can change the original one. And if you import, it doesn't change. So I'm going to reference in my render spheres. There we go, reference, and they're going to be right there. And the cool thing is we got this group. So at any point, I can scale this group up or down, right, to get exactly the size or the display that I need for this particular element. So for instance, in this particular case, I'm going to go right around there. I'm going to go for like a upper version on the elements, and I can get this in here, right? Like kind of like popping up a little bit there. I'm going to move the source a little bit so we get more space. And again, we'll just grab the whole group and we'll just have it right there. So I don't think I have any material on the thing right there, but I do have I am going to be adding an HDRI. And for this sort of things, I always recommend using a studio HDRI. Very important. Because if you try using another type of HDRI, I mean, it works as well, but it just looks, I think, a little bit better if we do in the studio HDRI. So let me get this here real quick. There we go. So we're going to go Arnold. Lights, we're going to add in Skydome light, and on the Skydome light we're going to add a file, And we're gonna add this small studio. Very important. This small studio, as you can see, actually has a white background, so it's very important to rotate this around so that it matches with the rest of the things. I am using my own sort of like a cloth right here. If you want to use it, that's fine. Just keep in mind that all of the light that's coming from here is going to be stopped by this thing, so your results might be a little bit different depending on how you do it. Let's very quickly go here to the system. Let's change this to GPU. Let's change this to Full HD. Full HD. There we go. Panels look through selected. That's what we're going to be rendering. And if we do Arnold and render, this is what we get. So as you can see, we get this render. It's a little bit dark, and again, it's a little bit dark because we have the background on the other, or like this background right here, affecting the amount of light. If we delete that and we just go for like the traditional render, you're gonna see this. Like, we are gonna be able to see our little setup right here working perfectly fine to calibrate the colors of the eventual textures that you're gonna have. Let me load the textures. I want to show them to you. So these are some of the textures that I've been working for this particular prop, and as you can see, it's looking a little bit better. And again, this is why this balls and this whole thing is important, because now I can definitely tell that this is completely like underexposed. So let's increase the exposure to a 2, and now if I check it out, I'm going to be able to see that now we're a little bit overexposed. The sword might look a little bit better, but I can definitely tell, for instance, that the white colors are getting way too intense. So probably like exposure of 1 is going to be more than enough. And this is, I would say, properly exposed. And your renders are just going to look a little bit more professional, and this is going to allow people to see how you are approaching your light information. Particularly for me, I would probably go and add another sort of like light or a couple of other lights to the scene to make sure that it works. But yeah, this is it, my friends. I hope that this whole like little lesson right now about modeling, texturing, and of course a little bit of this rendering preparation has been useful to you. If it has and you have not subscribed, really, it really helps if you do. So make sure to hit the little subscribe button down here. And also, if you want to know a little bit more about Maya, if this is the first time you're learning about Maya, or you want to learn more about the 3D world, you can check our site as well here in the description, where we have ZBrush courses, Blender courses, Maya courses, and very soon Substance courses as well. That's it for now, my friends. Thank you very much. I'll see you back on the next one.